I would like to have this kind of care be accessible to everyone. And what I would argue is I think where we want to go, that's where we're going. We have to find a way to make this kind of medicine the default.
Dr. Voss Eliopoulos, I am super excited to have you on the Staying Ageless podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So I really loved reading about what you're doing. I just think what you're doing is awesome. And I would love to just start with like how the journey of how people get led to certain things is usually more fascinating sometimes. So I'm curious as how you got into regenerative medicine and how you got into like what you're doing now with your practice and everything.
Yeah. Great question. I think to answer that properly, for me personally, I have to look back into sort of my roots. And my roots ethnically are my father's side of the family is Greek. And I spent a lot of time as a young child in the village where my grandparents came from, where they live a very, and it's changing now, but where they lived a very traditional Greek Mediterranean lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And so I grew up seeing that, there's a different way to live, different way to eat, and among other things, a different way to live your life, period. And so, having that sort of different perspective was foundational for me. There are a couple of other things like that in my life. Like, I'm dyslexic. Academics were always very difficult for me. And so there again, I had to find a different way to achieve success than most people in academics. And then finally, my Peace Corps experience was sort of I think the final like period, maybe not the period at the end of the paragraph, but a big accentuator where, I spent 2 years in the South Pacific in the Solomon Islands. And, from a kid who grew up outside of New York City, and, where I lived was fairly rural, but we were an hour train ride from Grand Central Station. And so, the way I phrase that is when I got off the plane in the Solomon Islands for the first time, I personally felt like like it could have been Mars. That's how different it was. I mean, it just that's how different the life there was. And so at a few different sort of like key important points in my life, I saw like there are different ways to do things.
Right.
And so, the through line from there to medicine is, I feel like most doctors still go into medicine for the right reasons. We want to care for people. We want to do the right thing. We want to give back to the community and to our patients. And the system is not set up to do that. Mm-hmm. And most physicians, and I was stuck there for a long time where I was just miserable. I hated what I was doing.
Wow.
I didn't know what to do because I was like, I mean, my whole life I've been working hard to do this thing.
Right.
And now I'm here, and not only is it not what I thought I was going to be doing, now I'm stuck because what am I going to do? Am I going to go to law school or business school or, different specialty? And so ultimately what happened was my partner and I, we were in the same boat. We were feeling the same way. And we just said there has to be a different way to do this.
Yeah.
And we're gonna do it. And we made the jump, and our colleagues thought we were insane.
Right.
What do you because we were trying to get so we're a partnership of two. We were trying to get other physicians who we admired and liked to kind of come with us.
Yeah.
But that kind of jump, most
Mm.
physicians are not, you're leaving security,
Yeah.
you're leaving, there are enough good things. I mean, let's face it, physicians make good money.
Mm-hmm.
And so the thought that you're going to give that up and the security of that for what a lot of people would say is, a feeling or an idea, an ethos
Mm.
of an ideal of what medicine really can be.
Right.
People think that's insane.
Right.
And we said, I mean, at least I'll speak for myself personally. I was like, well, I can't do it that way anymore. That's killing me.
Yeah.
So I have to, I have to find another way.
I love
And
that.
because I knew through my life, like I've seen that there's always another way. There's always another way.
Mm.
And so, I think we've found a way that works for us. We've found a way that works for our clients. It's not perfect because, at least for me personally, I didn't want to start a practice where really the people who can afford to see us are people with the money to do it.
Yeah.
And there, there is a part of me that, I would like to have this kind of care be accessible to everyone.
Yes. Yes.
And really, I mean, what I would argue is I think where we want to go, that's where we're going. We have to find a way to make this kind of medicine the default.
Yes. Yes.
And so that's really our sort of our core mission.
I love it. I love it. I feel like I'm in the same exact space mentally. I've just been like, okay, I have these clients that can afford me, and I deal with a lot of I deal with all kinds of chronic conditions, but I also deal with a lot of women with fibroids, endometriosis, PCOS, all the hormonal stuff, and we've been able to help people shrink fibroids, get rid of all the symptoms, get their periods back, get pregnant even without IVF, all kinds of stuff, right?
It's amazing.
And it's
Good for you.
the people that are struggling with this, the panic, the fear, the number of people struggling with this is too much. And so mentally, I my heart is just like, how can I, like, there's got to be a way to try to make it accessible to more people. And then at the same time, I don't want to do the McDonald's insurance situation. So I'm like, I'm still want to like give people filet mignon service. So I don't really know. I don't have all the answers yet, but I'm working on it. But I'm in the same place as you. I completely agree.
Well, I think, the only way I knew how to do it was, be the change you want to see, right? And I think kudos to you for because it sounds to me like that's what you're doing. Like that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And um, you know, things have a way of happening, and so we're sort of at a transition point where, um, we have partnered with someone who has a lot of business experience scaling businesses. And I think what's most important for me there is that our missions align.
Yeah.
And finding somebody because a lot of people, we live in Boulder. It's an affluent, well educated, I think open-minded community. This community is open to this kind of medical care. It has the disposable income to be able to afford it. But the mission is still, how do we get beyond that and to find someone with the business acumen who knows, okay, so how do we do this? And so I think for the first time, I think we might actually be somewhere where we might be able to sort of start cracking that,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that is,
Right.
And
Right.
so I don't think this is a 2 or 3 year process. This is the beginning of a
Yeah.
long process. But I mean, start with what you know and have your heart and your intention in the right place, and things start happening.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know how else to say it other than that.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I was gonna like literally I was gonna ask you later in the conversation like where you'd like to see the future of medicine, but I feel like you are implementing what you want to see. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah, which is
I
so
mean,
dope.
yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you. And and what I'd say is that what that means to me is a system of medicine where we connect with people,
Yes.
providers and patients connect. They form a long-lasting relationship that's meaningful, that's rooted in the health of all involved.
Love it.
And if you have that kind of relationship as the foundation of our system, I would argue you can't go wrong,
I
right?
agree.
Like there's always complications that you can't guarantee anything, but if people know that they're cared about,
Mm,
providers and patients,
yes.
then the rest takes care of itself.
Yeah.
And and it's more complicated than that. There have to be systems, and there has to be a way to pay for it. But I believe that the type of medicine that we have in this country, and even speaking to people in Canada and other places where there's single payer systems, a lot of them feel the same things.
Mm-hmm.
Surprisingly,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we need to replace that. We still need that kind of care. But in my opinion, that shouldn't be the default. That shouldn't be the only thing.
Yeah.
That's when you have the catastrophe, we still need the system.
Yes.
But to the regular everyday health of people, the what we would consider primary care or regular care, however you want to define it, should be rooted in the health of everybody and a good healing connection.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I'd love to see it be proactive and preventative versus reactive.
yes,
Mm,
yes, because all the problems that the system takes care of, we all know the vast majority of those are absolutely, completely preventable. I
totally.
mean, look at what you're doing, and we're over here treating symptoms. We're not getting to root causes. We're not dealing with the underlying issues, and this sort of branches into, you cannot, in my opinion, look at a system
Mm,
alone, right?
mm,
Like I'm a
mm.
cardiologist, and I have good friends they're EPs, like they don't even, and they'll even say like, we don't even look at the whole heart. We just look at the electric. Like all I do is the electrical system. That's it.
Yeah.
And I would say, okay, we need people who do that, but most of the people shouldn't. You have to look at the whole human being,
Yes.
the psyche, the family relationships, the mental outlook. You cannot separate that from the heart condition. They are intertwined. And that confuses a lot of physicians because we're
Yeah.
trained as technicians.
Yeah. In a
And
specific area.
so, yeah, putting the human back into the care, I think by default, you know, ends up emphasizing and accentuating the preventative, proactive, root cause type of care that frankly people really want. That's what they want.
Yeah, yeah, that's so good. And what you said about it being on both sides is so important because I mean the number of physicians I have talked to who are burnt out by the system themselves, their health is in disarray. I'm like, how are you out here like, you know what I mean? How are you helping anybody? You need help. Do you need an
Yeah.
appointment? like,
Yeah.
like um, so it's so important.
And I agree absolutely with that. And I think what's important that a lot of people don't know is that when that situation arises for the providers,
Mhm.
what it does is it drives an adversarial relationship with the patient.
Yes.
The
Yes.
patient becomes the problem
Yes.
because the physician's strapped, they're exhausted. It's work. Now it's work for me it's more work and I'm already so drained.
Right.
And so people feel that.
Yeah, they do.
And, and it's not good for the providers. It's not good for the patients. And so, um, anyway, I don't want to belabor it, but I
No,
think,
so good. So good. So good.
yeah,
Let's talk about regenerative medicine. What does that mean? And
yeah,
how did you get into it?
yeah. I mean, for me, I think regenerative medicine means something different than what it means to sort of the community at large.
Mhm.
Regenerative medicine is usually sort of understood to be a branch of medicine that uses biologic therapies, meaning stem cells or PRP as two examples, to heal musculoskeletal injuries, meaning
Mhm.
like shoulder issues, knee issues, spine issues,
Mhm.
wear and tear issues or injuries, ligament tears, cartilage tears, etc. And that's where we started about a decade ago, which was with stem cells and biologic injections for, injury repair,
Okay.
sort of a sports medicine kind of feel.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
what we found very quickly was that you can get outstanding results with those modalities, but you don't always. And the common denominator seems to be the health of the individual.
Mm.
And what we quickly came to realize was, listen, if what are your stem cells? What are your platelets? What are they? They're your healing essence. It's how your body naturally creates inflammation and heals things.
Mm.
And so if your health is compromised, the healing capability of your stem cells and your platelets is compromised. And so what we found is that if you want optimal results from, a sports medicine type of approach with a biologic, you get a way better result with somebody who's health optimized.
Right.
It makes complete sense. Well,
Yeah.
why would I take a stem cell that's compromised and expect it to give me a result, the same result that you'd get from somebody who is in outstanding health? Like, no, somebody who's in outstanding health, their stem cells function way better
Mhm.
because they're
Mhm.
healthy. And so what we found is if we'd have people come in and they're like, my back's killing me. I've done the steroids. I don't want to have surgery. I want stem cells. And we look at them and say, okay, we can help you with that, but we have to get you off the two diabetes medicines, one of the blood pressure medications, and the two cholesterol medications, because guess what? A lot of those, they poison the mitochondria. They have
Wow.
negative effects on how the stem cell actually function.
Hmm.
And as you know, because you're doing it, in perhaps a slightly different population, but you're doing the same thing
Mhm.
in a different system. And so you can
Mhm.
fix diabetes, most type 2 diabetes. You can
Mhm.
fix hypertension. You
Mhm.
can fix high cholesterol. And lo and behold, you do that foundational work, what a lot of people would call functional medicine or root cause or
Yes.
preventative medicine. But when you do that, the stem cells start functioning better.
Right.
And then a lot of times these people who are like, you guess what? Like my back pain's 90% better and we haven't done a single intervention.
That's so good.
We've just optimized the health. And so, what we found was, listen, for regenerative medicine, and this is where I think like orthopedists and traditional providers, what they don't understand is they'll see a study that comes out and they're like, Pierre, it doesn't work for Achilles, tendon tears. And
Mm.
I'll look at the study population. I'm like, the reason why the study didn't show a good outcome is because you're applying it to everybody without actually dealing with their underlying health issues.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so you're getting the result that from working with these therapies for a decade, like you're getting the expected result. Like the study is giving you the correct result, but
Mhm.
you're not asking the right question. The question should
Mm.
be, if we optimize these people's health, most of them wouldn't need the injection anyway because their body would just heal the tear.
Yes. Yes.
And then in those people who do need an injection, you would see an improved result.
Yes. Yeah.
So for me, to get back to your question, regenerative medicine, really, to do it properly, it requires the foundational underlying root cause preventative health that I think you alluded to earlier.
So
And when
good.
you do that and you utilize these biologic techniques, they work fantastically.
Mm.
So we have a lot of clients who come in and they're a metabolic mess.
Hmm.
And it can take sometimes a year. You start with the diet, you use a foundation of data, which
Mhm.
you can really custom tailor people's diets now,
Yeah.
specifically for their genetics and for their metabolic, their current metabolic state.
Yeah.
And, you start with those foundational changes, you start peeling back these chronic medications that aren't necessary, you unleash the power of the body to heal itself, and people live longer, happier, healthier lives.
I love it. I love it. It's like you went deeper because the thing is that there's a lot of people even practicing functional medicine or holistic approaches and still kind of doing a band-aid thing where
Yeah.
they're going for symptoms.
Yeah.
And it's so important what you just said because it's like, yes, there's all these great tools, but if we don't have the foundation, then we're just kind of like, let me give you this injection. Let me do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So, yeah, I agree 100%. I would argue that what you're doing with PCOS and in sort of the OBGYN space, you're
Mhm.
doing the same. I would say, like, to me, that's regenerative medicine.
Right. Right.
Now nobody knows, right? So everybody has a different idea what that term is.
Right. Right.
And a lot of people, I think a lot of regenerative medicine clinics, they see a cash opportunity and they're like, oh, we can make some good money doing these platelet injections. Like, we're going to do
Right.
that. And that's, they don't sort of make the next step,
Yeah. Yeah.
So what we do, I think, is very different than what a lot of regenerative medicine clinics do. I think we're a mixture of more functional, regenerative, and let's face it, like, we use traditional tools all the time. We're
Yeah.
traditionally trained. We use pharmaceuticals when they're necessary.
Necessary. Right.
We refer into the system. So for me, that's what regenerative medicine is.
I love that because I feel like that's what's going to promote longevity. I feel like that's where the whole longevity thing goes if we use all of these great new tools but we neglect the foundation, then we're not in the right space. I
Yeah,
think you're on the right plane because it's like you got to do the foundational stuff and then it's like, ooh, there's these cool tools that can help accelerate me a
yeah,
little bit.
right. If you need them. And
Yes.
the reality is, it's just like building a house. You can't build a house without a foundation.
Yes.
Or if you do, it won't be stable.
Yes.
And you do the foundational work, and then a lot of times, whatever the issues are, they take care of themselves.
So good. So good. What have you learned about mindset and healing and performing better, looking better, all the stuff that everybody wants? But how important is mindset or what have you learned through like working with patients?
Um, I will go a step further than that and say, also personally,
Mm.
for me, mindset, what a lot of people might call mental health, um, is absolutely one of the most important things about your health, your outlook, your life, how you
Mm.
live your life, how successful you are, how happy you are.
Mm.
And it cannot be extricated from your physical health. The thought that we can treat the lung or treat the gallbladder or treat the X name, put your system, organ, whatever issue here, without addressing what we're doing to ourselves and with ourselves, with our mind is, I mean, it's ludicrous to me.
Right.
And the importance of having a healthy personal, I don't know what the right term is, outlook, respect for yourself, respect for those around you, recognizing that, and I'm not, I don't have a particular, I guess I'm, not denominational around spirituality, but I think everybody can sort of see like there's something divine in all of us.
Right.
And and the world does not revolve around us. We are a part of something bigger.
Yes. Yes.
And how do I fit into that?
Yes.
How do I think about that? How do I contribute to the greater good? You love, compassion, forgiveness, self-respect, respect for others. You can't, I don't want to say you can't be healthy, but you can't, in my opinion, really be truly healthy without some form of grounding or understanding around that. And so, I'm not a therapist. I'm not, I don't have all the answers. But, having a healthy picture of whatever that is for you, I would argue you will not be healthy without that.
Yeah.
Plain
Yeah.
and simple.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
I don't know. Does that answer your question?
No, it does. It does. I think that all ancient forms of medicine, Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, all of them, like take into consideration like your environment, spirituality, your purpose, all of that. I believe in supernatural healing. I happen to be Christian and I've had supernatural healing experiences. So for me,
Yeah.
it's so interesting because it's like, when we're practicing, we kind of remove the spirit aspect, right? But it's like that's a part of it. Like there are people
It's
who literally experience miracles. You know what I mean?
Well, I think anyone who, and this is, I have a beef with this whole evidence-based thing because I'm not, I think it's important. We need to have evidence. We need to have a foundation of knowledge that's built on, some sort of understanding of, in fact.
Yes.
And if you don't understand that we are more than that, we will always be more than what can be quantified on a spreadsheet. Always. And I think everybody, no matter what belief system you come from, I think most people will agree with, when you actually say it that way to people, we are all that and we're more.
Yeah.
We are more than what can be quantified in a study.
Yeah.
And can be written about. And to ignore that is to ignore what is fundamentally human,
Yeah.
what is fundamentally humane, what is fundamentally ethical. And that's hard for people because it's soft. It's hard to define. It's hard to understand for people. And, if we get down to brass tacks, I mean, what are most people really struggling with? Yes, there are health issues and symptoms and hard, biologic processes, but at the root of that is something
Yes.
that is undefinable.
Yes. Yes. A lot
And
of
it
times.
exists, I would argue, perhaps almost every time. And I think this is
Yeah.
where the ancient healers, like, they understood that there's an energy, there's a flow of this energy. It can be hard to understand for people who are very concrete.
Yeah.
And yet, you know, it is undeniable in my
Yeah.
view.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
so, and then what I would say, I think maybe where you're going is, so psychedelics are a part of our practice.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, it's like, what? I mean, that's out of left field. But again, it goes back to sort of my through line from the beginning, which is, when we opened the clinic, I was calling everybody I knew, and I have a very good friend who I trained in residency with.
Mm-hmm.
He started before me, he finished after me because he deployed so many times to Iraq and Afghanistan. He was the physician for his
Oh, wow.
National Guard. I don't know what the term is, but his group that he was part of with the National Guard. And he said to me, he's like, Voss, if you're opening your clinic, you have to do ketamine therapy.
Hmm.
And I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, listen, um, ketamine changed my life.
Wow.
But there's more, which I think you might be interested in. So he said,
Mm-hmm.
listen, ketamine it's the fix for anxiety, depression, and PTSD.
Hmm.
And he was the medical director of a VA emergency department, and he's
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm battling with the VA to try to get low dose ketamine infusions. All
Mm.
these, I mean, this was a decade ago. He's like, they're putting them on opiates and atypical antipsychotics and antidepressants, and these guys are like, they're going crazy and they're killing themselves and they're
Jesus.
miserable. And
Right.
ketamine fixes them.
Wow.
And I have to fight, everybody to do this. He's like, you have to do it because otherwise there's nowhere people can go. And
Right.
so I pulled the research and I looked and I was like, I had no idea. I mean, I'd used ketamine for years as a sedative, right? For
Right.
pediatric procedures and some adult procedures. But in a low dose for anxiety, depression, PTSD, I'd never even heard of it.
Hmm.
But I saw it change lives.
Wow.
So, somebody comes in literally like depressed, can't get out of bed, tried everything, done everything, walk in, ketamine infusion, walk out a different person, like spouses like crying, like, what did you do to them? Like, I haven't seen
Explain
them
what
like this.
ketamine is. What is
What's
ketamine?
that? Yeah,
Explain what ketamine.
ketamine. Yeah, so ketamine is, I mean, it's a psychedelic. It's a
Okay.
dissociative anesthetic. It's legal because
Okay.
it's used commonly as a sedative. It works very
Okay.
well in children. It's the kind of sedative you can use without intubation because it preserves the respiratory and the airway reflexes. So people still breathe. It's an easy way to, somebody comes in and their femur's sticking out of their leg and you whack them down with ketamine, you reduce it, you put it under traction, and in a few minutes they're awake and then they can be, you've bought them time so they can be taken to the OR later and it can really be fixed.
Ah, I see.
So
Okay.
ketamine's
So,
it's FDA approved. It's legal because you can get it if you're a licensed physician
okay.
for the right reasons.
Okay.
It can be abused as a party drug, like many
Mm, mm,
pharmaceuticals,
mm.
but it has a knack for curing anxiety, depression, and PTSD. Now, it doesn't work for everybody. It works for
Mm,
most people. It
mm.
works for 60 to 70% of the people who use it.
Okay. And how
Um,
long are they on this? Is it like an ongoing thing, or is it like, does it actually like level out at a point where people are like, I don't have to take this anymore?
This is the amazing thing. For most people, it's somewhere between 3 and 6 infusions. And so it's not like they're getting a script and they're going home with it. They come in, you put an IV in their arm, they get an infusion.
Okay.
They do that 3 to 6 times. And for most people, it cures their anxiety, their depression, their PTSD.
Whoa, that's a big deal. That's pretty
Well,
dope.
the big deal, and we didn't understand why until actually very recently. So in the last like 18 months, the research has come out that it's not actually there is a psychedelic that like there's an experience that happens on the medication.
Okay.
Um, that does not appear actually to be the reason why you can get long-term remission or cure of chronic mental illness. The reason why the long-term cure happens is ketamine boosts the brain's ability to produce brain-derived neurotrophic factor or
Ah,
BDNF.
BDNF, right.
And so
Whoa.
what it does is now it makes people happy for a short period of time.
So it's
So
like rewiring.
So people can see, they're like, wait, that's what happiness is. That's what relaxation is.
Right.
That's what not worrying is in the psychotropic experience.
Got it. Got it.
And then it provides the brain the ability to rewire the neural networks toward that. So it can
Wow.
happen very passively in some people. Most people, there needs to be an intentionality around it, meaning you show them a better place where they would rather be, and then they have to do some work, which is usually some therapy, some integrative practice,
Mm-hmm.
working on their issues.
Mm-hmm.
But through that, you can create, if you have a default pathway that's depression,
Mm-hmm.
that's reflex because it's been that way for so long. Like your
Right.
brain doesn't even know where happiness is, let alone how to get there.
Yeah.
And what ketamine does is it facilitates the rewiring of the pathway.
Whoa, that's super cool, actually.
It's
Like,
fantastic. And
very
the thing
interesting.
is that other psychedelics do that too. So MDMA, which is why MDMA will be approved, FDA approved for PTSD
Okay.
probably this year.
Okay.
That phase 3 trial was like a smashing success. They've been working
Okay.
on it for over like 2 decades.
Okay.
So guided therapeutic MDMA sessions. Guess what? MDMA, which is
Okay.
also a party drug, which can be abused.
Okay.
It also significantly boosts BDNF production.
Mm.
Psilocybin, which is now, I mean, it's decriminalized on a state level here in Colorado.
Okay.
It's starting, it's decriminalization like marijuana is starting to happen in other states.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? Psilocybin does the same thing through a different receptor pathway.
Interesting. Very
So these psychedelics, which, I grew up and it was like, you're going to go crazy if you take that stuff, right? Like
right. Right.
they're highly stigmatized. So they have the amount of therapeutic potential that exists in this medication class is enormous because
Yeah.
if you think about now we have something
Mm-hmm.
that if used properly is actually very, very safe.
Mm-hmm.
I argue with the people who are the proponents who say, well, it's non-addictive. Like, listen, I've seen people who are addicted to drinking water and get hyponatremic, right? Like, so
Right. Right.
everything, we need to be careful
Thank you.
not to step on
Yeah.
that landmine again.
Right.
Everything can be addictive.
Right.
But if used properly,
Mm-hmm.
think about like the wave, think about all the other neurodegenerative disorders.
There's so many.
I mean, think about the dementia tidal wave that we all know is about to
Yeah.
rock the Western world.
I have a question for you though. Is there a way, like, my biggest thing sometimes is like the specificity of the treatment for that patient, right? So it's like, is there a way to kind of know either genetically or otherwise that this patient's going to respond well to this or not really? You just kind of have to play.
Um, the answer is someday we will probably, because we know, like from the ketamine research, there are responders and non-responders.
Okay.
We don't know how to test or prognosticate for that yet.
Yeah.
Someday we probably will know.
Okay. Okay.
At this point, we don't. But I would argue, short of like culture with specificity, we as physicians, if you have the space, we do that with
Mhm.
antibiotics all the time.
It's true.
Like, well, we try this one and you're not responding. Well, we got to switch you. But that
Yeah.
takes thinking. It's not cookbooked. And this is where it gets back to if you have a relationship with a patient that you care about and they know you have their back, you can work through those things
Yeah, and
together.
that part is very intuitive for me. So I know that a lot of people don't believe in, medicine and intuition going together, but for me, my work is intuitive. I really do have to look at the personality of the person, even as a behavioral coach. Like, I'm helping people change their habits, but I'm also dealing with your health issues. I got to know what's too much to say. I got to know what's too little to say. And then I also have to listen to what they're offering. What is your spirit telling you? What do you think about this? Do you like the supplement? What, you
Absolutely.
know? So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
But guess what? You're a healer.
Yeah,
You are.
yeah, of course.
That's what a good, healing, supportive relationship requires.
Right, right.
You have to use the foundation of data and knowledge, and you have to honor the and more that we
Yeah,
were talking about, which is what you're doing, I would argue.
yeah.
And it sounds like you're doing it very, very well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear. I can see just from talking to you. And so this is what we're missing in our system.
Mm, 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 mm. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. And patients can feel it, you know. I started my career at a wellness, at a weight loss clinic, and all of the patients started calling for me around the physicians to make appointments, you know. And I was like, I am not telling them anything, I swear. It's just they can feel it. They can feel the difference sometimes, you know, where it's like, this doesn't feel right. I need someone in my corner. I want someone to really be caring about me, you know, really, to have a real sense of care. So, and I got the sense from looking at your work and looking at some of the past interviews that you're the same way. I got the sense that you actually care about your patients.
I
Um,
do. Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah,
Because, and what I would say is that um, in the traditional setting, caring for people that way, it was killing me because it was one way
mm,
street. And
woo,
do you know what I mean? It was like
that's
the cup
deep.
was empty.
Yeah,
And I think this is where most providers fall into this trap. They're like,
wow,
well, if I keep giving, I'm just like my life force is, and they might not speak about it that way, but
right,
that is exactly what they're feeling.
wow,
And when
wow,
you flip the dynamic and you respect yourself and you respect your clients as much as you respect yourself,
yes,
guess what? That energy flows both ways.
yes,
They're filling me up as
yes,
I'm helping them.
yes.
And you're right, everybody knows it. And we just live in a time and a place where this is where I say, like, my beef with this, like, it's got to be evidence-based.
Mm.
Well, you know what? Sometimes there's no evidence for a miracle.
So true. All I can do is get the scans and be like, this is what happened. I
And
should.
and listen, every physician knows somebody who had stage 4 cancer and they were like, oh, your prognosis is, you're going to be dead in 3 months or whatever.
Hmm.
And like, and they're not, and they're
Yeah,
fixed,
exactly.
right? And so show me the data on that. The
Right.
answer is you can't, because that's operating on a different level, in a different plane, on a different, call it what you want.
Exactly. Exactly.
So anyway,
So cool. So cool. I love this conversation. So I want to wrap it up with you. Can you explain where people can find you and also how you work? I do have a lot of practitioners who listen to this podcast, and I think they would like I think it would
yeah,
be helpful for them to hear how you work.
yeah. How, meaning like
Like
from a day to day?
how you've set up your
Yeah,
practice. Yeah.
yeah. Um, so I guess what I'll say is we have Rocky Mountain Regenerative Medicine, RMRM.com is our website, is a clinic that we founded here in Boulder, 7 years ago. Um, we are a small concierge type regenerative medicine practice. We are low volume. If I see four, Monday I had a very busy day. I had 4 patients.
Yeah.
I spent at least 60 minutes with every one of them.
Awesome.
And we, we practice, we have if you look at our website, we do all kinds of things. And what I would say is I would actually not focus. Most doctors, when they're trying to figure out like, how do I transition out of this? Stay in your wheelhouse, use the tools you know how to use, but figure out how can you dig deeper and how can you create a scenario where you are like, it's easier than you think. Sit down and say, what would my day have to look like for me to be happy to walk in here every day?
Oh, that's good.
What is it that I need? What would make me happy? Write that down and do that. It's that simple.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah.
And people think, well, that's not realistic. That's crazy. Listen, are you going to have to make some sacrifices to make that happen? Absolutely. But what I can tell you from my personal experience, are they absolutely worth it? Oh my gosh. My relationship with my wife has never been better. My relationship with my children has never been better. My relationship with my clients has never been better. Because I'm practicing, I'm happy. I'm with a group of people that I like working with. We're a great team. We work well together. And people feel it when they walk through the door.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that directly answers your question. So Rocky Mountain Regenerative Medicine, we also, our sort of new venture, which is the first step in, okay, how do we make this accessible to everyone? It's, longevityhealth.clinic. Longevity Health it's a very high-end executive type full medical screening. So people often think of like, oh, I'm going to Mayo to get my executive screening. Well, guess what? You're getting 40-year-old technology and lab testing. And so it's not cutting edge. It's not obsolete. It's completely obsolete. We are doing, so really the plan with Longevity Health is you start high end to generate the revenue so that we can create the systems to be able to provide a cheaper product to people.
Love it.
And so that's what Longevity Health is. So we have our practice in Boulder, and longevityhealth.clinic is sort of the first step in how do we change the way medicine is practiced in this country. And that's I would say RMRM is step one, Longevity Health is step two, and stay tuned because once we have the funding, we're going to be looking at how we can make this more accessible to more people.
I love that so much. You're doing such amazing work. You have such great energy. And I'm sure that your patients are benefiting from it. I really appreciate you and the work that you're doing. And I thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
And, the feeling goes both ways. Thank you. No, I mean it. You're fighting the good fight. And I think we both are. And I'm proud to be standing there next to you.
Awesome. Awesome.